Hey everybody, my name is Wayne Baker, and I'm one of the staff therapists at Affair Recovery. And today I'm going to talk about how do we become more forgivable. When we betray our spouse in big ways and in small ways, we create this rift in the relationship. And infidelity, along with other unloving behaviors, communicates to our spouse that they don't matter to us, that we don't care about them, and that possibly we're not going to be there for them as we go through life. And most of the time, I don't think that that is our motive, even in the case of infidelity. But when we look at it from the perspective of our betrayed spouses, that's what it feels like to them. And unless our actions communicate that they do matter to us, that we do care, that we are going to be there for them, it's difficult for our partners to feel safe enough to reconcile with us. The offended party is the one who has to write off all the debts created by this betrayal. But it's the unfaithful spouse who can provide the necessary conditions and behaviors for that reconciliation, that recovery to happen. So we've identified 8 steps to become forgivable. If you're the unfaithful spouse or the one who has caused the wound, and you would like to reconcile, here are just some brief descriptions of the steps that you can take to become forgivable and to create the conditions for healing and reconciliation and transformation. These are certainly applicable to smaller offenses as well as the bigger offenses like infidelity. So the first step is to identify for yourself how your current beliefs about forgiveness prevent others from forgiving you. For example, you might mistakenly believe that your spouse has to forgive you. I personally believe that forgiveness is for your partner's sake, and it's in their best interest. By releasing you and this need for retribution, they set themselves free. Reconciliation, which a lot of people mistakenly believe is forgiveness, is really not forgiveness. Reconciliation is optional. It's typically based on whether the offending party is safe enough, has done the work of taking responsibility, expressing empathy, those kinds of things. That demonstrates that you are safe enough for your spouse to forgive and to reconcile. They're very different things. If you believe that your spouse has to reconcile with you, there's a good chance that belief itself is blocking you from getting what you want. I hear in my office almost weekly, maybe not weekly, but frequently, where the unfaithful spouse will say, well, the Bible says you got to forgive me. Well, the Bible doesn't really say that. And I would just say, especially in the early days after discovery or disclosure, it's best not to talk about what the Bible says until you've done a really thorough job of examining what your ideas of forgiveness are and taking responsibility for the infraction. Step 2, be loving rather than codependent. Being forgivable requires emotional strength. It also requires a lot of vulnerability. But you need to be able to be there for your spouse, helping them heal rather than beating yourself up with shame and self-contempt. Shame makes it all about you. You see that your spouse is over here hemorrhaging, bleeding, devastated from what you've done, and you feel horrible about that. You know, it's okay to feel horrible. You should feel bad about what you've done. But because you're focused on your own pain and your own shame, you fail to help your spouse heal, i.e. stop their bleeding. Put a tourniquet on to help them, and then help yourself. Instead of helping your spouse, they feel burdened to having to help care for you because of your shame and your hurt. Certainly your shame has to be dealt with. I have talked about that in some other videos, and I'm sure I'll talk about it again. But your shame has to be dealt with and be transformed, but it takes a different task in the healing process. I just heard this week where a man cried in my office about what he had done to hurt his wife. And it was so hard to help him see the difference. And sometimes it's very subtle about how he feels, and he's making it all about him instead of his wife's pain. So then she turns around and tries to care for him, and she's stuck. And they're 2 years down the road. And it's been a really difficult journey for him to do that subtle work. Step 3, and this is a really big one. Take responsibility for what you've done. Don't talk about what your intentions were, what your justifications are, your childhood wounds, or being a victim to somebody else's advances. Take responsibility for your choice to step outside of the marriage. If you fail to take responsibility, your spouse loses hope that you'll ever do what's necessary to keep this from happening again. Step 4, to the best of your ability, try to understand from your spouse's perspective what your actions have cost them. Allow yourself to grieve for your partner's losses. And until your mate believes that you're interested in understanding them and their pain and what it's been like for them, they won't feel that they really matter to you or that you really care. Failure to see it through their eyes makes it difficult for you and your mate to let go and to reconnect. So therefore, both of you end up feeling more and more alone for a longer period of time than really is necessary. This is also a really big step. Step 5, make sincere and appropriate apologies to your mate. Notice I didn't say apology, I said apologies. It's plural. It's not just a single event that you can say, I'm so sorry, now let's get over this. There may well be thousands of consequences as a result of your choices, and they all have to be worked through and forgiven, each one of those consequences. Continuing to express remorse on a daily basis and make amends as you go through this process lets them know that you grieve over what you've done to them, and it helps make you more forgivable. Step 6, if you want to be forgivable, make restitutions. During the recovery process, consider their needs as more important than your own. Seems like I've heard that somewhere else before. And you do what's necessary to help them heal. For example, if your affair partner rode in your car, there's a good chance that that car is a reminder and a trigger for your spouse. And I highly suggest do what's necessary and sell that car and make it safe for your partner to be with you, to go places, so that every time they get in that car, it's not a trigger or reminder. That will definitely impede forgiveness, reconciliation, and you becoming forgivable. Step 7, taking responsibility for your personal healing is critical if you want to be forgivable. If your spouse can't see any effort on your part to make sure this never happens again, it will be difficult for them to believe that there's hope for a safe future for you both. And there are many ways to accomplish this, including 12-step work, men's groups or women's groups, accountability, counseling. That's my personal favorite one. And we suggest also that for many people, Hope for Healing could be a great starting point. It's one of the online courses at Affair Recovery. So please consider strongly taking responsibility for your own healing. Step 8, forgiveness is a process and it takes time, sometimes a lot of time. And pressuring your spouse to get over it doesn't make you more forgivable. In fact, it makes it far more difficult for your partner to reconcile with you. Be patient. And instead of asking if they'll please forgive you, which puts the burden back on them to forgive, tell them that you hope someday that they can forgive you and that you'll do whatever it takes as long as it takes. Remember, it's a process and it takes time. I realize that these brief descriptions may have created more questions than answers. And in the near future, I'll expand on these steps. In the meantime, do what you know. Take steps towards healing. Tell your spouse that they have all the time they need to heal, and try to understand what it must be like to live with you. Taking any of those steps helps you become more forgivable. And if you haven't already, check out Boot Camp, which is a detailed, practical solutions for healing from infidelity. And if you want more hands-on help to address your relationship, I invite you to consider attending an EMS weekend. Whatever you decide to do, don't allow yourself to remain stagnant. Be thoughtful, keep it simple, and be consistent. That's a really important piece. Consistency, even a little bit every single day, really is the best way to do this and very helpful for your spouse and for you in the long run too. Move forward and capitalize on these small victories along the way. And just know that we at A Fair Recovery are here to help you in any way we can.